son. Where'd you find this?
Buckle up, buttercups. It's time to get down to business. Oh, yeah. It's the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. Totally legit.
It's a Totally Legitimate Business Podcast, and we're back here joined once again for like the fifth time, Michael Pridmore.
Ooh, thank you. Yeah, it is number 5. Yeah.
It's a delayed sound effect, but is it? I was guessing. I was just guessing.
I think this is the 5th. I was counting it last night, like over the past year?
Yeah.
2 years? Yeah.
Yeah, I think you may now actually hold the trophy for the most recurring episodes.
Let's go.
Yeah, hell yeah.
Cheers. Love it.
But just a friendly reminder to anyone who's watching this, if you haven't already, like and subscribe. Also follow us on Patreon for the additional portions of every podcast. But let's dig right into this, because this is a subject that has been fucking me up for a very long time, and there's been some interesting developments in the past couple years regarding this subject. I think it's time we talk about Antarctica, baby.
It is a very mysterious place. There's so much. And I love asking people about it, because it's like, what do you know about Antarctica? And it's like penguins. That was an answer I got today. Yeah, I think there's, Yeah,
I don't know. I'm not too familiar with that ecosystem myself. They keep it pretty locked down.
They do.
You don't really get to explore too much of Antarctica.
Speaking of, I guess one of the things I found alarming, or that I had no idea about, and it kind of comes back to something I did know about, which is always interesting, and that'll make sense. But the picture of the famous doctor who took out his own appendix. You've seen that? Photo?
That sounds amazing. I'm going to look it up right now.
So yeah, there's a famous photo of a Soviet surgeon who removed their own appendix. And the reason that they did it was because their appendix burst, But why he didn't just go to a hospital is because he was in Antarctica. And now it's like a rule. If you are a doctor, because there's usually like one on a station, you have to have your wisdom teeth removed and your appendix removed so that you're good. So yeah, you have to get body parts removed to go to Antarctica. That's pretty fucking brutal.
Interesting.
Like, straight up, get that shit out of here.
Well, I mean, it makes complete sense. Even in an ideal scenario, how quickly are you going to get somebody out of there? Honestly, certain things out there are practically a death sentence. Right.
Yeah, and I think that just knowing that story kind of sets the stage for like Antarctica's brutalness. Like, yeah, if you need medical attention, you're just not. Especially if you're the doctor, like you're the one that gets knocked out. Yeah.
Damn, hardcore. Okay, so where did you start? How did you start? Because I know when we talked about doing this, you're like, I'm not really familiar with this subject at all. Where did you start, and where did you go?
Right. Yeah. I always just love a good Wikipedia page. You know? And just start there. You had mentioned just some things about Antarctica to me too that I'm sure we'll cover. So I definitely went down those rabbit holes. That helped like flavor the search, a
definitely.
bit. But yeah, I don't know. There's so many angles to it, I think, which is funny. I love stupid questions just when it comes to this. So I was like, are there natives? And like something unique about Antarctica is that it's the only continent without known natives. So it's like, all right, so like who runs the place, And then I started getting into like the jurisdiction type stuff, and I had seen a YouTube video too about like isolationism, like murder, and it kind of ties into that of like who polices the place. And that was like one, like just normal, I would say, out of all the stuff with Antarctica stuff you could look into that's interesting.
Yeah.
Just like people, being there and being isolated. And with that, you get people having like hallucinations and stuff like that, and kind of leads into the cryptozoology stuff. Like
the real juicy stuff.
Yeah, like there's researchers there who are studying like primordial Earth conditions and like no human interaction on the planet, and yeah, like tons. So then you just go straight into like conspiracy theory stuff from there. It's a nice slide.
Yeah, it's an easy taper down.
Yeah, you go from like reasonable questions that don't have clear answers to just the bizarre and the. I think it's like anything where we can't just go down there and check it out. Like people can say whatever.
Yeah,
and the mystery like blossoms with that.
Yeah, of course.
So it's a great bed for that.
As a related aside, have you seen the newest episode of True Detective?
I did, yes.
Okay, so there was like, as I was refreshing my memory on a lot of these things, there was like a reminiscence of that episode dealing similarly with the isolation, in their case the days of dark, and am I hallucinating this? Is this really happening? It's something that most people, I think, don't necessarily understand, because it's not something that most people are going to experience unless they go to a place and are in extreme isolation under those conditions for a long amount of time. I guess that's why it's always interested me, in the sense that these people choose to go down there, and there's all this crazy shit that happens. Like how I found out about even McMurdo Station was, I saw news reports of people like losing their minds down there and stabbing others, like committing violent crimes because they lost it. Mm-hmm. And that kind of led me down that similar trajectory, down that ramp into the spooky shit. But there is that kind of like, this shit could be real. These people could actually be seeing these things down here. Who the fuck would know? There's like 8 people down there at one given time. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
So who the fuck would know? But then it's also like, they could also just be. They've been staring at white. They're seeing shit. They're losing their mind. They're experiencing. They were not psychologically ready to go to that level of isolation, and they fucking snap.
Yeah, I mean, like, I think we all maybe have a sense of this from COVID, like exaggerated, but like in Antarctica, it is a risk to go outside. like you're just not. It's just not chill just to like go outside. You do it when you have to, and there's a lot of people out, a lot of protocol and everything. But other than that, they're just inside. They're in like a inhospitable planet. It's like the most alien thing on our planet, I think.
It's the closest we could get, other than like maybe a desert, the center of a desert,
Mm-hmm. Right.
And then I just want to pull up pictures of McMurdo Station so people can kind of just see.
Oh yeah, I don't know about this either. So,
like McMurdo Station is the big American outpost, I'm pretty sure, and it's big. They've got a library, they've got, a bar, they've got stores. It's like a whole little town.
Wait, is that the Northern Lights? Does Aurora Borealis happen at the South Pole too?
I don't know if this is Photoshop, but it wouldn't shock me in the sense that it would be, of course, solar flares would flash over the bottom of the. At that extreme place, extreme scenarios like that can manifest.
Yeah, it's just funny because like Northern Lights, like you think of that, but
they never talk about the Southern Lights.
See, for a reason. Even the internet is filled with misinformation about Antarctica. They got the fucking Northern Lights on there. Like, they didn't think people would notice.
It's so disruptively confusing. But this is what it is. It's a lot for out there, but it's really not a lot. And it started as a humble little outpost and around World War II, and then it kind of developed. So basically, like at the end of World War II, all the countries decided they were gonna equally use this place for research, and that is the Antarctic Treaty. I've got that pulled up right here too. And this is kind of roughly how they divide it up. Now there's
just pieces of the pie.
Essentially, yeah. And there's, collaboration across, in the same way they do with the space station. There's cross collaboration and research, but each of these countries have their own little outposts conducting their own little things. And the stated purpose of being down there is atmospheric research and, like you were saying, weather conditions, drilling ice cores and seeing what life was like, thousands, millions of years ago. But it's a place where everyone can go for the benefit of humankind to research things that could possibly benefit for humankind. That's what all these countries say by signing this treaty, is we're not going to fight over this place, and we're just going to be here doing chill shit.
Yeah, it has to be bad down there for the major nations of the world just to be like, pass, like what we'll share. Yeah.
Well, I'm sure there's a story, but ultimately, I think when you get to a place that's that isolated, you're less likely to find an enemy. You know what I mean? Like you're more likely to be like, oh, let's work together to survive, because we might not. If we don't work together, we might all die. So it's those types of extreme conditions that can hopefully lead to this. But you're right. After this point, it quickly devolves into like some real alien lost civilization shit.
There we go.
So before I've got some very dramatic asides, and there's a couple that I'll definitely save for the extra portion. But why don't you go ahead? Why don't you start listing off some of the kooky shit you come across once you got there?
Right. What I thought was like the most like effortless one is just like, was that the lost city of Atlantis is underneath Antarctica. It's like, of course. Yeah. It's just like the one thing.
There it is. Yeah, there it is.
It's there and we can't get to it. Like, shut the book. It's over. What? I mean, yeah, I feel like the giant spiders really surprised me.
The snow spiders.
You told me about that when we were like kind of just shopping the idea, and that was something I had never heard about. And that is one of the kookiest ones, because its description.
That whole story is definitely kooky. Okay, that is a good example of internet bullshit, right?
Oh yeah.
So this really starts on Reddit. A guy making an anonymous Reddit post saying, "My dad worked out there. He was the doctor. He was the only doctor out there for a period of time, and he saw some shit that was just absolutely bonkers." And basically goes on to explain about how it's a known thing that there are Starship Troopers like snow spiders with 30-foot spans, body spans. That
5 legs.
5 legs.
I thought a very interesting detail.
And they only roam at night or during low visibility. Okay, so there's the first indicator that this could just be hallucinations.
Right.
But his dad, this doctor, supposedly worked on a few people who had been injured in incredibly violent ways. And, one guy gets ushered in and he's screaming, we let him loose. And he's there with some military guys. And the military guy's like, shut up. Don't talk about it at all. And then there's this other guy they brought in, and he was dead, but like his lower half had been ripped off, and his guts were hanging out. And they were like, we need to make this look like some kind of accident so we can send the body back to his family. Anyways, the poster shows some like anecdotal evidence of his dad being there, like a little plaque and a piece of paper or something saying, the doctor of McMurdo Station for this time to this time. And then he says his dad had more shit on his computer. and the last posts are him trying to like get into the hard drive of the computer, and he never posted again. But the snow spider, that's the only place you can really come across that tail. Nobody else has validated snow spiders. However, there are a bunch of other people that say there's like some weird other types of creatures down there, up to and including aliens. And I think one thing that might be kind of interesting to break out, and I don't know how much, did you ever read about the maps, the old maps that showed Antarctica as a mass that was connected to South America?
No.
And, okay, so there's this one map that like all the hidden history guys refer to. It's called the Piri-Reis map. And on the Piri-Reis map, you'll see this map was supposedly made in like the 1500s, and it was made referencing much older maps. And it's this map, and there's one other famous named map of that time that are unanimously agreed to be real maps made by real cartographers who really knew what they were doing, but they kind of suggest that Antarctica was livable. Like it was lush green land that had, animals and everything. So anyways, the Piri-Reis map here, it's kind of compared to the east coast of South America. And I'll see if I can get the portion that I'm not sure what portion of the map people think is Antarctica, or maybe it's like some people see up to here as being South America, but then this down here is supposed to be Antarctica, and it shows like trees and animals. So there's like in the world of alternate history folks, that's a real, the Atlantis thing is like a real, people really take that seriously. And we can get into that more when we get to like Admiral Byrd and shit, but there's like plenty of people who, just like Mars, say they have seen pyramids and the tops of clearly man or not naturally occurring structures that exist out there. Did you come across, this is a thing from Google Maps, at one point in the early 2000s, there was like a massive cave, 200 feet tall, 200 feet wide. Looked like there had been a bunch of vehicular movement in and out of it. And then a couple years later, it gets like photoshopped out. And then a couple years later, it returns, but it's at a lower resolution than the rest of the satellite imagery around it. Did you come across that?
No.
Okay, let me see if I can find that.
Yeah, it's just the bed of nefarious things like that to happen, right? It's like, it's so easily believable,
Well, I mean, what the fuck do we know? Like that's right. The interesting thing. It's like, what the fuck do we know? Okay, I found this picture, and this is like the first picture that was viewable.
Ooh.
200 feet wide, 200 feet tall, and what looked like crude steps. And there's enough discoloration in the snow to imply something's coming in and out. And then I don't have a picture of what they replaced it with, but at some point, the picture that's available in Google Earth is just completely blocked up over here. And then there's another picture where you can see it again, but it's even lower resolution than this first picture, which was the first one that was catching people's attention.
I love that thumbnail. Who lives here?
Who does?
Who's in this cave?
But let's continue. Cryptologically speaking, what else you got? What other things you come across?
One avenue I went down of like, what are like some of the major like scientific discoveries that have happened there, and that even gets a little woo-woo weird. Not quite giant spiders. That one takes the cake.
It really is like the pinnacle. That's the sinker,
Oh my god, giant! Yeah, but yeah. There's like there's a lot of research stations down there looking at all different types of stuff. But there's like they detected like a high energy neutrinos down there, which is something that doesn't come from our planet. So that's a little interesting. There's like, stuff, particles in our solar system, like beyond our galaxy even, that are in the ice somewhere there. Yeah.
So I've got
is this ice cube telling you about?
This is the thing, the Neutrino Observatory. So they've got I
was hoping it was the ice cube telling you about neutrinos.
I think that, well, I mean, it might be. This might be their YouTube page. They've got a diagram of the thing.
No, the rapper Ice Cube.
Oh, that would be sick. Today was a good day. So I think this is their situation in Antarctica.
Ooh.
From like overhead. And then here's him explaining nerd stuff. Okay, so this is the big shit. So this is real. This is a real thing that we have. It's a real thing that we do. And down there, it's supposedly still very active. So glad you brought this up, because this is like one of the newest and most interesting developments in this scenario.
Right.
So there's this guy who came forward at one of the most recent Stephen Greer press conferences. His name is Eric Hecker. Is this guy. He's been on very few podcasts. He's got a YouTube channel. He's got some very kooky ideas, but he definitely did work down here, and he definitely did have access to certain things and saw certain stuff, which he divulges in his whistleblowing at that event. And basically what he says with relation to the neutrino device is that its stated purpose is, atmospheric research, neutrino research. But what it's actually capable of doing are insane things. And he qualifies this as, like some other very high power antenna arrays that we have, as actually an energy weapon. What they're doing with it is, yes, they're doing research, but they're also researching how to weaponize it. And he says that this thing is directly responsible for 2 earthquakes that occurred in New Zealand and Indonesia.
Oh.
So, and again, like when you get to the high energy, directed energy weapons, this is like HARP, but it's in the ice. And I'll see if I can find some pictures of the things that, like this, it's a real thing. We have like these metal spherical cones that are embedded in the ice, and they can transmit and receive, and it can do all sorts of shit. It's some of the most cutting edge shit. I think it's also important to note that that's what it looks like. It's like an array, and they're embedded in the ice.
My goodness.
That guy worked for Raytheon, which is a huge military contractor. So, like him being here, having access to these things, and again,
wait, so are they go ahead. Sorry.
this is a device. It has to have a manual, and he has the fucking. This is on the internet. I pulled this up on YouTube. Like, this is not esoteric shit. This technology does exist, and they're doing some of the most cutting edge scientific research with it. But the true extent of that, we will never know. But we have to assume that they're at least experimenting with some way how to weaponize it.
So we've weaponized a continent that's inhabitable. But does it create like vibrations? Like how? So
he says there's a couple different things. I also think he says there's like a separate laser, like in super insane laser system that he believes is being used as a main communication relay for an actual fleet of spaceships that America has.
I love this. Here we go.
You didn't come across this at all? So this is some fringe shit.
I wanted to save some things for like the true surprise for me as well, because I know you're good at finding this type of stuff.
I find there's like so many. I'm saving the juiciest shit for the end, but this is a really good story because the guy is kooky. The guy says he lived in Long Island and was a child patient of MK Ultra experiments at Montauk, which if you don't know about Montauk, it's basically the story that they base Stranger Things off of. But there's a conspiracy that there was this facility in Long Island that they were using for MK Ultra type experiments, like brainwashing, mind control experiments. And the lore of that becomes the fertilizer for Stranger Things. Anyways, so he says he was a part of that as a kid. He lives a strange life where he ultimately becomes like a tradesman and becomes super wealthy people's like fix-it man, and then gets a job out here as like a fireman subcontractor for Raytheon. And because he was the fireman out here, he had access to any building because he'd need to be able to control electrical or water or whatever. So he says in his time out there, he came across stuff that would suggest to him that there are not only large bases that they are using that power is being directed to, but nobody knows of, like underground somewhere. There's advanced laser technology that could be weaponized or could be some kind of advanced communication system for deep space. There's this neutrino satellite. And then he doesn't really talk about the aliens so much, in the sense that he's more focused on like this neutrino thing. That's real. That's actually there. They're literally talking about it on their YouTube page. It's a real thing. I'm sure they're probably doing all sorts of environmental and laser research. You can utilize the freezing cold of this place in a bunch of different ways, especially in energy research. What better sink of a ton of heat created by electricity than by being surrounded by ice or having a thing encased in ice? It's like better than a water-cooled computer system. You know what I mean?
Oh, right. Yeah,
you know, that's it. Again, that was like one of the mindsets behind this satellite is, how can we do it at lower energy and generate higher energy? There was something about utilizing the temperature out there to benefit the conduction of electricity or whatever.
Yeah, like if you built this and put it somewhere in the middle of the equator, it'd probably just like blow up from getting too hot.
Yeah, it'd get too hot.
But yeah, if you give it the right environment with the right engineering in mind, yeah, that is pretty insane.
So I would highly recommend watching him at the Stephen Greer press conference. I would also highly recommend watching. He did like a 30-minute Sean Ryan podcast episode. But let me just see if I missed anything in here.
But I love how he's like, yeah, the aliens are there, but and like goes back to the ice cube. Like
that's the thing is, I really don't think this says it's South Pole and UFOs are his main focus. I haven't heard any of him talking about the UFO portion of Antarctica. I just discovered he has a YouTube page the other day. So I will continue to watch that and see what he has to say about that. But from the press conference, all he talked about was advanced scientific technology that we have out there that he knows about because he literally saw the power grid. He saw where the power was going. He had to know what were the danger zones. If something happens, where's it probably going to happen and how do I get there the fastest? And he worked for Raytheon, and Raytheon is deep in that shit. If you're working at Raytheon, chances are you're probably going to be sideways involved in some of this shit. That's just the work that they do. So, I don't know, super interesting and definitely worth checking out. And that's a very new development.
Yeah, that's insane. Yeah, it's like looking into all the technology down there. It's almost like overwhelming. Like I was just going off like scientific achievements, but even more like underground private industry weapons manufacturing or energy stuff. And there's just so much space for that down there for that to happen,
dude. And nobody looking. Nobody's looking. So
just the pool of people too you get who talk about this are just it's a small group of people. Like, you got this like Raytheon expert guy, I just think that makes it so much more. Yeah, just like it's just a plot for like every movie. You could just like stick Antarctica in there somewhere.
It is perfect. It really is perfect. I think, okay, so there's like, where the lore, like the real creepy lore around this shit starts is World War II. So World War II, it's supposed that Nazis had made their way down to Antarctica.
Yes.
And in order to ensure that we had influence down there, we took more interest in Antarctica. And there's a very famous expedition down there led by Admiral Byrd called Operation High Jump. And I've got the Wikipedia pulled up here. And this was in 1946, 1947. It was tasked with going down to Antarctica to establish the research base, what ultimately becomes McMurdo Station. But the lore already began there. What's with the Nazi shit? Are the Nazis down there? Did the Nazis have some kind of like crazy shit going on in Antarctica? There's a little bit of lore suggesting maybe there was like a rogue faction that made it down there and was just so isolated that everything else crumbled in the real world, but they were just down there kind of surviving or thriving because no one was bothering them. But that's neither here nor there. I think it's proven that they had been down there, but they've never talked about discovering a Nazi bunker down there. But it wouldn't surprise me because they made bunkers wherever they went. Anyways, Operation High Jump, Admiral Byrd goes down there, pretty large. Right down here. Here we go. Task Force 68 included 4,700 men, 70 ships, 33 aircraft. And it was supposed to be 6 months, and it only lasted 6 weeks. Excuse me. My dog's in here. He's yelling at me.
Nice.
They were supposed to go down there, establish a base. They cut the trip short, and they come back, and that's where like why'd they come back? What'd they see down there? Where this gets even stupider is a couple decades later, somebody supposedly uncovers Admiral Byrd's personal diary. And in his personal diary, he talks about being surrounded by metallic craft for a number of days, being like, surveilled by metallic craft, and then discovering a crystal city underneath the ice.
Love that.
But the whole we can't necessarily prove that was actually Admiral Byrd's personal diary. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
And there's a few other stories. There's not much. Other than this, there's not much coming out of what's going on down here, except for the legitimate research that trickles out into the mainstream. It doesn't really get another spicy addition until, I guess, maybe the late 80s or early 90s. There's a UFO documentarian named Linda Moulton Howe, and she brings forward 2 stories that basically become like the updated version of Admiral Byrd's, like what did they experience down there. And one of the guys that she brings forward says they were instructed to go to an octagonal structure that had a door, and it was a stone door that if you just pushed it, it opened. And they went in, and it was like the building was alive, like it was emitting light from the walls. And they went down further and found, like a base, and there's fucking, I don't know, like aliens working on humans, or an underground maglev train that goes to New York. I don't know. That I don't really trust anything that Linda Moulton Howe brings forward, because she's like super woo-woo. She's she'll entertain any idea.
Yeah.
But the story is interesting, and it dovetails nicely because around that same time, people were starting to say they noticed like pyramidal structures or other types of unnaturally forming formations in Google images of Antarctica, because that was also starting to become a thing, Google Earth and stuff. The the other story is of this guy, and maybe this is actually part of the snow spider guy, but there's one story I remember where the group of military guys gets called to this Chinese research outpost, and they go in and it's like carnage. And there were like these cages with some of the snow spider type creatures in them feasting on babies. And
Human babies?
had like human babies, and they had like gotten out and killed all the researchers there, and they had to like hush it up. But again, like I'm not really, I can believe Eric Hecker more because the things that he's talking about actually exist. They actually exist out there. I haven't seen any really good picture of a snow spider or of a pyramidal or octagonal man-made structure out there that's maybe like, oh shit.
Right.
But it is possible. There's a thought that because of volcanic activity in and around Antarctica, there's like a geothermal heating effect that would occur if you were below the ice. So there are like a fair amount of legitimate people who are like, there's probably legitimate ecosystems down there.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
it's not impossible for life to exist down there, so we can't necessarily rule that out.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Just thinking of underneath all of it too. It's easy to think about life as just like what's on the top, like,
Yeah.
oh, no, it's just ice, whatever. Probably something out there though.
Well, there is, like, they are for sure researching the wildlife that exists in the lakes and ponds underneath the snow, even if it's just, bacterial.
Oh yeah.
Like, but they're for sure. It's just really not that crazy.
Yeah.
For
sure, like
life finds a
microbial.
fucking way.
Oh yeah. In any, environment. Right. And if we can entertain that idea, accept it, just think of, what if there was a spot on Earth that nothing has been able to touch for the past, however long it's been ice. We popped up here, we move around. But yeah, like
We think it's all there is.
But yeah, what if just some humans went there forever ago and now there's just ice people? Or there's that's where all the Sasquatch are. Yeah.
That's who lives below the ice. That's where they're coming from.
Talking about all this stuff, I meant to say, yep, there is definitely like a Sasquatch.
There's got to be
story.
Yeah.
Of Antarctica. Yeah, so they're there too, because they're everywhere, and there is aliens there too. So of course, Sasquatch would be there as well. But yeah. There's got to be some crazy shit out there. And I guess that's like what we know about the places that humans are available to go to. We discover new shit there all the time. We discover new insects and subspecies, and like nobody goes here. Nobody historically has ever really spent a lot of time here either, other than, researchers in their little, makeshift cabins, their igloos. Yeah. And looking into like the isolationism and like what it does to the body, because something I just think about is just like, we live in the middle with this big old sphere, and like the magnetism we experience, like the Earth is spinning, even though we don't realize it, but there's just these like little differences when you go to the poles, such as the like 30 days of night type thing in Antarctica. Or in both, but yeah, and like Earth's magnetism down there is different, just because it's one of the dipoles of this big planet.
A vortex, yeah.
And there's parts of our bodies, are magnetic. That's like the whole MRI episode. So I just feel like, there's like no way it's not fucking with people because we're not supposed to be there.
Well, and it is. So Eric Hecker, apparently, you know what Havana syndrome is?
I've heard it. Is it kind of like Jerusalem syndrome a little bit? But
what's Jerusalem syndrome?
Oh, we'll get back to that. You go first.
Well, basically, Havana syndrome is at some point, pretty recently, I guess maybe in the past 10 or 20 years, there was a rash of people in Havana, Cuba, coming down with like incredible brain fog, headaches, delirium, like hearing voices, seeing things,
Right.
and nobody could figure out what the cause was. And what a lot of people think, including people in intelligence who are aware of this shit, are like, those people were getting bombarded with a directed energy weapon of some kind. We know there is technology that can make people feel that way, and it's probably likely that they were getting
Right. Yeah, I do remember that now that you say it. Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
So Eric Hecker says that's a real problem for them down in McMurdo Station. And like we were talking about before, how I heard about this was reading about the stabbings. It was literally like 17 stabbings so far this year at McMurdo Station. What is going on? Eric Hecker would say that it's either a unintended or intended side effect of the neutrino detector. But there's also sound psychologists and therapists who would say that the extreme isolation and not being psychologically prepared for that element of existence down there, that can also cause the exact same symptoms of Havana syndrome.
Yeah.
So it's like,
and that's just one like symptom, like being isolated, not talking about everything else of
Right.
like possible malnutrition,
going through a breakup, right?
Oh,
all the real dark shit.
like nutrition and sunlight and exercise and everything else. But yeah, just being there. One thing I thought this was like one of the most interesting things. And I think it's what started getting me going down the rabbit hole in the beginning. But just since we talked about stabbings, so we showed the pie chart, and France had like the tiniest little slice in that pie, which is hilarious. But you mentioned it too, like you likened it to like the space station. So if someone goes to Antarctica, it's usually a research team. Usually that research team is commanded by a nation, like Switzerland wants to go. So they'll assemble a team. They'll get all the smartest people. They probably won't all be from Switzerland. They'll be from Japan, US, all over the place, right? Different nationalities, different laws in each nation. And so they're all brought down here, or brought down to Antarctica, with somebody leading the team, one nation leading this team. And then as they're down there, like shit like stabbings happen. People have been murdered. And so the responsibility then is, Sweden's not gonna say, we're gonna punish, this South Korean person based on our laws. We're just gonna say, hey, South Korea, do what you want to do with this person. And South Korea is like, fuck, it's going to take us like 3 weeks to get down there to like do a proper investigation. Can y'all just do it? So like immediately there's this kind of kerfuffle that happens with anything legal, and like sexual assault, terrible problem for that too. And it leads into a lot of crimes just being unsolved, even more mysterious.
Yeah, it's even more mysterious.
But but just that alone, that's like a real world problem of how do you deal with something like that, which involves multinational people, and you probably want to keep those like national relations working well. Like most of them are like government people too. So yeah, did you come across stuff like that?
No, for sure. I pulled up again, like that's really what sucked me into Antarctica in the first place. But like it has a Wikipedia page about crime in Antarctica.
I have this up on my tab too.
Right. So this is all the different legal disputes. I think this is how they decided to deal with these types of legal disputes down there. But yeah, sexual harassment and assault, just like in the military, is a huge fucking problem down here. And it's, even of the stuff that is reported, it's like, how can you research it? What if the one person responsible for researching if the claim is accurate is the person who did it? right? It's just like a
Yeah, read the first line. Yeah, that 1950. This one cracked me up. This is how fragile Antarctica is.
The Vostok Station, then a Soviet research station in Princess Elizabeth Land, sounds like a shitty amusement park, was the scene of a fight between two scientists over a game of chess that is also so Russian. When one of them lost the game, he became so enraged that he attacked the other with an ice axe, according to some sources. It was a murder, though other sources say the attack was not fatal. Afterwards, chess games were banned as Soviet-Russian Antarctic stations.
You can't play chess anymore, guys. It's a violent video game.
Back then, that's like the only thing they had.
Oh,
they
God.
had this and maybe a fucking book.
That like paddle with the rubber band and the ball that you hit.
Yeah, that's the extent of their entertainment out there.
Great. I thought that was I breezed through this as like just seeing the major crimes, and then I was like, there's way more than this, and like started digging. But I loved that chess was banned.
No, for sure. I would have to dig further for like the one that I saw was like it was a story with a companion video, and it was talking, like interviewing people down there who were like, this was my experience and this is how it was dealt with, and they were all like real shitty, terrible scenarios. Kind of the same. A woman was like, well, the person who I was supposed to report it to was the person who was assaulting me, so what am I supposed to do here?
Yeah, what do you do, right? There was a YouTube.
You can't even drive away, you know.
You can't go outside.
Yeah,
right?
You are stuck.
The one that got me into it was like a husband and wife went down there, and like she died while they were down there, and then he came back and like collected a bunch of insurance money, and there was some like sketchy stuff. So,
that would not surprise me either.
I'm not trying to give anyone ideas here, but.
Saying.
But it did like shine a light. It's like, okay, like dude kills his wife. Like people have been prosecuted for that like hundreds of times. I mean, sadly, but you know, it's a pretty easy thing to investigate. But just it being in Antarctica,
dude, logistics,
like geographically and logistics and everything, made it like nearly impossible. And then it was plenty of time for the dude just to be like, boop, you know, and just bounce.
Yeah, see ya.
Yeah. But yeah, that I think was like the most shocking. My friend was like, oh, I might go to Antarctica and do some research. He's in geographical stuff. And I was like, don't, like, I can just tell you, like, just like think about doing that. Well, and that would be better than the experience.
So, and I've met a couple people who have like gone down there for an expedition of some kind. One of them was when they went down there, they were with the government. They were like as a part of the video crew for the government. Anyways, if you're only going down there for a month, that's not that bad. Most people could probably do that. A couple weeks, a couple days, you could definitely do that. It's just a vacation. When you're down there for 6 months, when you're down there for a year, when you're down there for I don't know when I'm going to go back, that takes on a whole different level of like the world just fucking shrinking around you, like
it's like prison
in a way. Yeah,
it's exactly like prison,
but it's like in the Alex Jones Prison Planet. Like you're a prisoner, but you're not in a jail cell. You're on a planet, but you're a prisoner on that planet.
yeah, that's a great way to put
it. I remember when I was watching that video and reading that article, they were talking about all the amenities as like, this is what's supposed to keep people sane, but there weren't. They're like, and you know, they try and have a bunch of things for people to do. Like they've got a bar and a library and a workout, like a gym, a workout area.
Sounds like a condominium in Nashville trying to like sell you up on their place.
The condominium's probably nicer because it's just basically jail. That's what a jail has. It has a library, an area for you to work out, a cafeteria, no bar, but hey.
No dogs. That's hilarious. Yeah, just imagining it as jail. Just next time, I hope, anybody after listening to this, when they hear or see Antarctica, they're just like jail.
I mean, even just like the only way they get people down there really is by C-130, a military aircraft. Like, those are your options. You can't get a flight to Antarctica. You can take a cruise, but you're not going to like be able to explore Antarctica. You might see it on a boat.
Yeah, in the South America has like one of the main ports where you would sail to Antarctica. I think that, because I was like, what's the, yeah, like, do you fly there? It has to be close to land.
Right.
You know, like for people to populate. But yeah, I love it. It's just so wild.
It is wild. And again, like, regardless of if any of the kookiest shit is real or not, it's just a freaky place. Like, this latest season of True Detective, regardless of what you thought about it, as I was redoing the research for this, I was like, oh my God, this is just True Detective. And in that respect, I guess True Detective did a good way of like there for a lot of people down here, there's the isolation like really fucks with them. Really, they see things. They and it's like a known thing out there. Like, you need to help each other so that you don't get too far down the crazy path and start just randomly stabbing people with the closest pencil.
You're right. And yeah, like what True Detective reminded me of that I thought was better was The Thing, that movie.
Oh my God. Dude, I just, for the first time in maybe 10 years, I watched the remake, the original, and then wasn't there like another companion movie or a movie that was related to it, like a prequel? Or I guess maybe that was the 2011 one.
Yeah, that was a prequel where it ended like the original movie started.
Right.
That was pretty good. That was pretty.
It was great, and that's a story. I've always fucking loved that movie because of how fucked it is from the get-go. Like, there's no hope from the very first weirdness.
Yeah, it captures that isolation, the paranoia, and yeah, like what, when everything's going good, it's still not ideal, given the situation you're in. But yeah, like what happens when something actually shit hits the fan?
Well, and that becomes a little more relevant and honestly equally horrifying, because this has been a conversation in the past 2 years. There is a fear that at some point we might discover or unfreeze or unencapsulate some kind of virus, bacteria, or life form that is more dominant on this atmosphere, in this realm that we occupy than humans are. And that has become like a real concern, especially with all the ice cap melting.
Right.
You might know better than me, but I feel like I've seen multiple headlines where like scientists who are experimenting with this thing urge not to let it. I don't know. Like, there could be shit locked up in this snow, and as the snow melts, who knows what we're gonna find?
Right. Yeah. I mean, something not so like creepy and weird, but like, or kind of. But there is a big volcanic eruption in Krakatoa. It caused like a couple years of I think it was like 2 years of dark in like 500 AD, right? And all that like soot and like, just shit that's in smoke from a fire like that, like covered the earth, definitely got into that ice and got froze over. And then, so at one point, if it starts melting, we're just going to have, and this is just one example of one earth event, but, melting all that could just introduce a ton of sulfur into our water and, like a mass extinction.
Holy shit, dude.
So, and that's just like, that's an example of one thing. And there's been tons of earth events. So,
right.
Yeah. I love the idea of something frozen down there, though. Like, just like an in-place running, Tyrannosaurus Rex or something like that.
Superhuman creature,
Yeah, and that's kind of the thing where the thing is going, right? Like,
yeah,
and that's where
absolutely, 100%.
That's also where I hoped True Detective was going.
Yeah, I think everyone did, especially at the end.
Find the fucking monster in the ice that's like a god, and some like Godzilla kaiju level shit is down there. Yeah,
the thing is aliens. that I didn't really understand until watching it recently, because I was a kid when I had first seen the movie. And I like knew it was a monster, but I didn't understand it was an alien. They found an alien, a frozen alien. I don't know. It just once this shit starts melting, who knows what they're gonna find down there. I don't know if I went into this at all with you at any of the other podcasts, but I was going down the rabbit hole of the lost civilization, the artificial timeline, like the history of humanity that we know is not accurate by any means.
Right.
And there's a guy who's putting his particular area of focus into Mexico and South America. And there were a bunch of recent LiDAR scans in the past 5 years that have discovered multiple 1,000-building complexes in the deepest parts of the Amazon and deeper parts of Mexican jungles. And this guy basically goes out to explain that, like, we've only uncovered, of the ancient sites, we can now tell with LiDAR that we've only discovered a fraction of them. And the ones with the biggest stones, the ones that are the most large, those are so deep in the jungle that no human can even get there. So all the ones that we're seeing on the outside, that was like, after the knowledge had been lost, they started building the buildings with smaller stones.
Wow.
And the buildings that we have uncovered are like the last groups of people that built buildings with that knowledge. But if you go deep into the forest, the point that I'm trying to make here is, like, if at some point there was life on this continent, who knows what is literally just under the snow? Like, there actually could be complexes of temples from tens of thousands of years ago when it was habitable land, and there was one of the great megalithic site or descendants of a megalithic Atlantis type civilization.
Yeah.
Up to and including even Atlantis, yeah.
And like that ice cube thing, like one of the graphics you showed, it showed that they were like drilling like 2,500 meters into the ice. Like, there's that much ice. Isn't it like 1,000 meters till we like from ground to like space? Am I underestimating that?
I have no idea, but
just like
it's deep.
So just the amount of,
they're fucking
like,
deep, yeah, and they're like, they're not touching the bottom by any means, and it's not as deep as they can drill. So,
I feel like it's. Oh, I was dead on. It is 1,000.
Nice.
Or no, 100 kilometers. Whoa. But yeah, like just the amount. There's just that example. Just the amount of scale of ice and stuff that could be under there.
Yeah, who the fuck knows?
Yeah, I mean, I love the idea of some like super smart like alien just coming down to our planet, surveying, being like, nah, and just going down there and like drilling a big ice hole.
This'll work. This was better. Yeah.
Yeah, it's just like a Dr. Manhattan. Like, I do not need to be bothered by the by the world.
Yeah, no, seriously.
I feel like, and that'd be a great place for any aliens just to have a little peace and quiet.
Yeah, any aliens, if you're looking to rent land down there, you contact me. I'll rent it to you for a real reasonable price.
Don't talk to France.
Don't talk to France, because they don't own shit down there.
They barely got enough.
You want to talk to America. Okay, so I have the juice. I'm saving the juiciest thing for the former segment, but we're here. We're at the end of the first hour. If you want to keep watching and listen to what we go into after this, you're going to have to jump on the Patreon for XLB. But I want to thank Mr. Michael Pridmore for being on the show again. Thank you very much for joining.
Thank you for having me, as always. I love our conversations.
Do you have any parting words?
Don't go to Antarctica for any reason. There's no good reason to go to Antarctica, even if you study the stuff that's important. Just don't. That's
good advice.
That's my advice.
It's good advice that you can take from an actual scientist.
Yep.
All right, this has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. We're out. We'll catch you on the next one.
This has been the Totally Legitimate Business Podcast. The end. With your host, James Oliva. Executive producers, Clint G and James Oliva. That's obnoxious. Sound design, mix, and master by James Oliva. Literally no one cares. For more Totally Legitimate Business, subscribe to our YouTube channel at Totally Legitimate Business or add us on TikTok at TLB Pod. When will this end? Thank you for listening. Now get back to work. Move it along, buddy.